Yeah, what we're doing today, Cam, is going to be the Tuesday thing. Tuesday, the one about the slavery article. Don't worry about those. Or you don't have to do them. Um, okay, so here's what's happening today. Okay, well then you just follow along with us for today. Or you can keep working on your paper, writing papers. Okay. Do you have your math and everything done for today? Okay. All right, guys, here's what we're going. I need everybody to zip. My turn. Zico. All right. So we've been talking about the Underground Railroad and free states versus slave states. And when we left off in the book, we were learning about Bleeding Kansas, and we talked about that yesterday when we looked at the Underground Railroad map. That we saw that Kansas is kind of like right in the middle of the United States. And if you turn back to page 253, you see the Kansas territory smack dab in the middle. It's kind of right along the lines of where the free states and the slave states were. And And so people had the popular sovereignty. So that was the right to vote whether they were a free or a slave state. I'm not really sure why some of my friends are just talking in the middle of me teaching. Guys, come on. 254. Let's go. I've said it a couple of times now. You've had plenty of time to get there. I'm not going to keep waiting on you guys. You need to catch up without talking.
Is it 252? 254. Why does Abraham Lincoln ever...
I'm all done. I'm ready to keep moving on. Okay. So people were fighting in Kansas because they wanted to vote for it to be free or slave. Okay. Moving on from there. A nation divided. This is on page 254. And then you guys on Seesaw should have something called December 4th, Heading to War Continued. And if you click on the images, don't click on add response, just click on the images, and you will have a yellow looking paper and that with words on it. And that's what we're looking at in our textbook.
Okay.
By 1857, the United States was close to breaking apart. Many Americans wondered whether the country could survive half free and half slave. In 1857, a case about the rights of enslaved people came before the United States Supreme Court. It was the case of Dred Scott versus Sanford. Dred Scott was an enslaved person bought by a doctor in Missouri, a slave state. The doctor moved his household to Illinois, a free state, and then to Wisconsin territory, where slavery was banned by the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Years later, the doctor and his household returned to Missouri. When the doctor died, Scott said he was a free man because he had lived on free soil. 11 years later, the Supreme Court refused to free Scott. Chief Justice Roger Taney wrote that enslaved people could be bought and sold and treated as an ordinary article of merchandise. So just like you could buy a water bottle or a thermometer, this doctor had bought Dred Scott, and he was just another thing that belonged to him. And that's all that slaves were. They were just a thing that belonged to somebody else. So now that Dred Scott wasn't owned by this doctor anymore, he was free to be purchased again by somebody else because he was just a thing, according to the Supreme Court in that case. He wasn't a person with rights of his own. He was a thing.
A guinea pig. Can I go ask the nurse if she has water?
Yes. Okay. All right. The court's decision. Yeah.
Avery doesn't know what page we are on.
I told her.
Page. Oh, okay, perfect. The court's decision meant that enslaved workers could be taken anywhere, even free states, and remain enslaved. So because he purchased him in Missouri, which was a slave state, he could move wherever he wanted, free states, Wisconsin, where it was completely banned and illegal, and he was still stuck being a slave. He wasn't automatically free because they moved to a free state. Bad, bad, bad.
Unless at night they take off running.
I mean,
or unless you're Usain Bolt.
Okay. In 1857, most Northerners didn't want to abolish slavery in the South. They didn't want slavery in new territories. This issue would soon become important in a political campaign. Lincoln against Douglas. Here comes Abraham Lincoln. In 1858, two candidates from Illinois attracted national attention. Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, ran against Stephen Douglas, a Democrat, for the Senate. Compared to the popular Douglas, Lincoln was unknown. The two candidates held 7 debates or public discussions on political issues. The 3-hour debates drew crowds as large as 15,000 people. That was a lot back then. Like a tremendous amount. That'd be like 15 million or something today. Like, it's ridiculous. The candidates argued over many issues, but the issue of slavery drew the most attention. Although Douglas disliked slavery, he refused to speak out against it. He believed popular sovereignty, which was the voting, was the way to resolve disagreements over slavery. Douglas tried to paint Lincoln as a reckless abolitionist. So Douglas wanted to win the election. So he was saying things about Lincoln that made him sound like he was very, very, very anti-slavery. He wanted all of it to go away, period, the end, no matter what. Lincoln believed that slavery was wrong for a nation that was founded on freedom. In a speech during the campaign, Lincoln said, "This government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free." So the whole reason, and you guys mentioned this on like Monday or Tuesday, I think, in our discussion, the whole reason we became the United States was to have our freedom. We didn't want England telling us what to do from thousands of miles across the ocean. We wanted our religious freedom. We wanted all of our freedoms. We wanted to live our life the way we wanted. The whole reason we became the United States was for freedom. And now we're not giving half of our citizens freedom. So that was Lincoln's standpoint. He's like, this is crazy. We're founded on freedom, which means that all of the people should be free, not just some of them. Jason, yes, sir.
Are we gonna have any like words for them, like date?
No, we're going to have a worksheet here in a minute for you guys to fill out.
Like, are we gonna write down words and their definition?
No. You have a worksheet to fill out. It's mostly multiple choice.
Miss Dab.
There are a couple words for you to write, and yes, you can use your words, your books. Okay. Yes.
Oh, never mind.
It's a really short worksheet, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, never mind. I just figured it out.
Okay. Lincoln received more votes than Douglas in the election. At that time, state legislatures chose senators for the state. The Democrats held more seats in the Illinois legislature, and they picked Douglas, a Democrat. In the end, the campaign helped Lincoln. Republicans from the North and the Midwest agreed that he would be a good presidential candidate. Okay. So, by 1859, many Americans feared that war would soon tear apart the nation. There seemed to be no way to avoid the violence. John Brown's raid. For John Brown, there was no compromise on slavery. The fierce abolitionist had been a conductor on the Underground Railroad in New York. He was also involved in the violent events in Bleeding, Kansas. Remind me, what was Bleeding, Kansas? Sophie.
It's like 5 people, where they killed 5 people,
Mhm.
and so they called it Bloody Kansas.
What happened before those 5 people got killed? What did the other side do? Jason.
There was a bunch of fights.
But what started, Grayson, what started it?
So, a bunch of people from the South started coming down to Kansas and voting for the slaves to become a slave state, and then the North wanted to get in on it, so they went up there and started doing it for a non-slave state, and then they figured out what each other were doing, and then they got into a fight and 5 people got killed.
Before 5 people got killed, after everybody moved there, Parker.
I thought it was because they set their town on fire. People went up to the north and burnt down a house. Yeah, a house.
Okay, so that was the start of the fighting, but it's going to continue, right? Okay, so in 1859, Brown tried to start a revolt among enslaved people. He planned to attack an army arsenal in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Brown then planned to give the weapons to the enslaved people who he believed would rise up against plantation owners. On October 16th, Brown and a small force captured the arsenal. Enslaved people nearby did not join him or revolt against the slaveholders. Why not? Why do you think they wouldn't? He just stole a whole bunch of weapons so that they could rise up against the plantation owners. Why would they not do that? Zeke, why do you think?
Because they know what they're scared because they know what these creatures are capable of, and they will just like. And if they do something like that,
Mute.
don't want to them and will
They could punish them, they could kill them. They're frightened, okay? Because they're still the minority, right? Like, and the little bit of weapons they have, is that going to be enough to fight all the masters and all of the slaveholders? No, not at all. Okay. So, 2 days later, U.S. soldiers commanded by Colonel Robert E. Lee recaptured the arsenal. Brown was convicted of treason or betraying one's country and hanged. His rage struck fear across the South. So, he was captured by Robert E. Lee. He is a general, or right now he's just a colonel in the Army, in the U.S. Army. He's going to be a major person in the Civil War here in a minute. The election of 1860. In the presidential election of 1860, Abraham Lincoln ran as the Republican candidate, and Stephen Douglas ran as a Democrat. They've already run against each other for the Senate in Illinois, and Lincoln lost. So, but now they're going to run against each other as presidential candidates. 2 other candidates also joined the race. Only Lincoln took a stand against slavery in the new territories. Southern lawmakers warned that if Lincoln won, they would secede or withdraw from the Union, the United States. So the Southern states said, we don't like Lincoln. If he wins, we aren't part of the United States anymore. We're not having it, because they wanted their slavery more than they wanted a president. They figured they could find a new leader and they would be their own country. Lily's like, this is no good. This can't be good. In November 1860, boom, Lincoln was elected. Then in December, South Carolina was the first state to secede or withdraw. By February, 6 more states had seceded. They established the Confederate States of America, also called the Confederacy, and elected Jefferson Davis as their president. So they elected their own president for all of these slave states in the South. And now all of the slave states are known as the Confederacy, or the Confederate States of America. First shots fired. In the spring of 1861, so right after the election was in the fall in November, and in the spring, Confederate troops, so the Southern troops, seized several U.S. Army arsenals in the South. Fort Sumter is an island arsenal in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, and they refused to surrender. The commander asked the federal government for more supplies and weapons, but before supplies could arrive, Confederate guns, the South, fired on the fort on April 12, 1861. The Civil War had begun. Civil War is a war among people who live in the same country. Okay. So, don't worry about words to write down. This isn't like your science, okay? Now, you have a worksheet. You guys have one. It should be on today's assignment for add response. But it uses information from not only today's textbook, but from the textbook stuff you had on Wednesday that was also called Heading to War. Let me pass them out their worksheet. Coordinated? No, I don't remember anybody ever talking about that. Not you.
Hey, Miss Bab.
Yeah.
What about all the other social studies things that we weren't doing, like yesterday's?
We had to do the 2 Harriet ones.
Yes, you have to do the 2 Harriets one. Some of you still owe me some unfinished work, and I'm going to email. Well, you guys don't have email anymore. I'm going to message you about that, because some of you guys get busy on your worksheet. You just need to, just like in science, you need to look up the answers in your book and figure it out. Yeah, you can use them.
I was wondering about the other 2 that I haven't sent you in yet that we did on like Tuesday or Wednesday.
Tuesday, the one that was called something about intro to slavery. Hang on, let me look at what they were called. Hang on.
What are we gonna do with those?
Yes, 254 or 250. Okay. Tuesday was called slave labor influence. You do not have to do that one.
Okay. I was just making sure.
Wednesday was called December 2nd, heading to war. You need some of the information on those pages to answer the questions for today.
Oh, okay.
And then yesterday, heroic Harriets, you do have to do that one.
I did that one yesterday.
Okay. So then today's worksheet, if you hit add response on today's, there should be a worksheet that you'll answer. It's mostly multiple choice. It's got a couple definitions at the top, but the rest of it is 5 multiple choice. So it shouldn't take you that much. Okay. So that's what I need for social studies. Science. Oh yeah. Okay. So work on that. I'm going to hit stop record. Josie, what's your question, babe?